G'day folks, it's Anthony here from Supernal Magazine Australia and our interview series. And joining me as my co-host today is ShirleySienna. Hello Shirley, how are you?
Hello, Anthony. I'm fine, thank you.
That's good.
Thanks for asking.
Oh, you're welcome. I should always say that about me before I even say it. Thanks for asking. Thanks for being here. So yes, we are just getting back into our interview series, and we'll be using this video with our guest that's quietly waiting in the background that we can see, and we're just politely ignoring at the minute. Anyway, folks, supernalmagazineaustralia.com.au. You can see all these videos. You can get podcasts. You get the magazine. It comes out bi-monthly, and it is free. So subscribe, get all the information together, enjoy the read, and get back to us and let us know what you think. Our very special guest today is got her first story coming out in Supernal about women's health and supporting healthy menstrual cycles with good food. And so issue 47 is all about good food. So Sarina Coventry, welcome to our interview series.
Hello, thanks so much for having me. I feel super excited about this chat, and yeah, honored to have my first article in the magazine.
Yeah, it's exciting, and it's a really good topic, and we'll definitely get into the topic fairly soon. But let's call it for what it is. There's ShirleySienna Coventry and there's Sarina Coventry. You two obviously are related.
We are cousins, second cousins. Sarina is my cousin's daughter.
Yes,
it's
and
the age gap.
And we only met I think it was for the first time properly a year and a half ago now.
Did we meet at Isabel's memorial? Were you there?
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
so
okay.
a bit before that, but then you came down. You were traveling with a friend of yours.
Yeah.
Around doing a bit of Australian travel, and you stopped here at Hastings on the Western Port Peninsula with your van, and we had a good few days, didn't we?
We had an awesome few days. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
It was lovely.
So for people watching, Sarina, you're up in New South Wales on the coast?
Yeah, I'm up in New South Wales in Sydney, in the Northern Beaches. So nice and beachy. It's not very nice today, but yeah, it's warm.
Yeah, well, I think you guys up there have been copping a lot more heat and even a lot more rain than we have down here. We've had a very dry couple of months. Like I think we only recorded 2 mil for the whole month of February, which is not a lot of rain.
We definitely had a lot more rain, and it was muggy and sticky and hot rain, which isn't nice because you can't even cool down in it.
Yeah, it does make it tricky. Now, your story, supporting a healthy menstrual cycle with food, and you're able to talk about that because you are a health nutritionist.
Yes.
Take us on that journey. Why did you go down that path?
Yeah, well, the path, I think most health practitioners I talked to went down the path of nutrition or naturopathy kind of from their own health issues. So before I studied nutrition, I was studying psychology, and I always wanted to be a nutritionist. This was when I was 18, 19 years old. Always wanted to be a nutritionist, and everyone always told me, you won't make any money. It's not a good career path. Go and do something else. This was adults saying this to me. And so, yeah, did psychology, had a beautiful long-term partner. And I guess the big thing that happened in my life that was the catalyst to becoming a nutritionist was actually having an unexpected pregnancy when I was 21. So that was, I know it's a triggering topic, but I underwent a pregnancy termination, and it was this huge, it's funny, we were talking about a little bit before when big things happen in your life that are a catalyst for change or a catalyst of unfolding a new path. And I thought, I don't want to do psychology anymore. I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. And I met up with an old friend who I'd gone to primary school with, and she started sharing that she was studying nutrition. And I'm very big on signs and things happening for a reason. And I was like, wow, this is a random friend I haven't seen in years. She's talking about studying nutrition. I've always wanted to do this. I'm going to go and do it. So I went to the open day, and I was told by 3 different people that they said, you look so familiar. And I thought, this is weird. I've never been here. I've never seen any of these people before. And yeah, I ended up doing this degree. I'd always been interested in nutrition because I grew up in a very, very health conscious family. We were always eating whole foods. Both my parents always cooked for us. My mom was a freak. She would cook us like lunch meals for breakfast. We'd be eating meatballs and rice and veggies for breakfast instead of cereal, or I'd be the child that was at school with dal and lentils and cans of chickpeas instead of people having muesli bars and muffins and whatever. And when I was younger, I hated it. But as I grew up, I realized how important nutrition is for your mood and your health. And when I started that journey of, going through the unexpected pregnancy termination, deciding that I wanted to do nutrition, it all just sort of unfolded. And each step along the way with my own health and the things that I went through just started paving the way more and more for wanting to work in women's health. So that was kind of the baseline of how I got to nutrition.
Wow. So Sarina, I mean, that's a big life change right there, and you've just condensed that down into this little story. The psychology side of it, there's a huge amount of psychology goes into understanding food and people's mindsets. Did that sort of give you a bit of a hand in that space?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I think when I first went into nutrition, I wanted to understand how food impacts people's mood, impacts their behavior. I knew for me, there was a direct correlation in what I ate and how I felt. I was always a very, very sensitive child. I had numerous food intolerances. We were always doing numerous elimination diets and trialing all of these things. So that kind of link between food and mood was massive for me. And I wanted to explore this more and more. And I guess the beginning of it was wanting to use psychology behind why people eat the food they do and how it impacts them. But as I got further and further through the degree and more things started happening to my health, it just started organically unfolding this path for why I now work in women's health.
Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting journey. I mean, I think the big awakening for me really about food started a few years ago. However, the research that's been done and the stories I've been reading in this issue, it's like hammering nails into the wall. It's finally sinking in that, what we're told and how we've been conned into eating certain foods. Even down to, I'm a big fan, and Shirley will tell you this, I love my cooking. And so I'm always trialing new foods and trialing different things and enjoying it. And I love watching a certain show called MasterChef. But all the foods are prepared, and there's wastage, and there's this and there's that. And we're all told this is what you've got to aim for. And so it's interesting to just sort of take on that whole vibe and realize, well, there's the mindset, is how you grow up and what socioeconomic group you grow up in, and how it's put to you, that foods that shouldn't be eaten full stop are touted as good for you.
Absolutely. And I think that, being in the nutrition world, there are so many crazy fad diets and detox programs and health retreats and all these big, intense things that people do. But so many people are forgetting to come back to the basics. And I always say to friends and other practitioners, it's like balance might not be sexy, but it's the one thing that actually works long term.
Mm-hmm.
And so if people could understand the bread and butter of eating real foods, trying to eat foods as fresh as possible, knowing how to prepare really basic foods in a delicious way that doesn't cost them heaps of money. It's actually much cheaper. I did a grocery shop with my sister a while ago, and she eats a lot of packaged snack foods and frozen meals or whatever, because she just can't be bothered to cook. And I buy a lot more grains and whole foods and cook a lot of things from scratch. I cook most of my meals at home from scratch purely because I love it and it feels best for my body, and I know exactly what's going into the food. But her grocery bill was nearly double my grocery bill. And there's this mentality I think people have that eating well is really expensive or really hard or takes a lot of effort. But when you start understanding how you can prepare fruits and veggies and meats and grains and all these really basic staples in a delicious way, it just makes it so much easier to eat well. And then you start feeling amazing. And so many people are walking around feeling like crap, but they don't actually realize it because they're just used to feeling that way.
Mm-hmm.
And
They
so
don't even bring it back to food. They don't even
No.
associate it with the food.
No. My friend worked in corporate, and she said the amount of women that would say, "Oh, I have a headache," and pop a Panadol, and she would say, "Well, how much water have you had? Have you eaten?" And they would be like, "No, no, 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 no." They just would kind of pie it off and then pop a Panadol when they were probably dehydrated. They probably didn't have breakfast. They were probably fueled on caffeine and staring at a screen for 4 hours.
Yep.
That's the bit that frustrates me in the world, because the solutions can be so simple and so easy.
Yeah.
People just don't want to look at it or don't want to acknowledge it.
I think that's the solution. Sorry, I think that's the solution for a whole lot of ailments, not just the I'm tired, I've got a headache at work. Probably for most diseases and ailments, it is all about the nutrition. And it's not because you're eating, not so much maybe because it's the not understanding what you're eating, not hydrating, doing all that, and that feels too hard. So people just don't go there and just medicate.
Well, I think it's too easy for people to
Answer
Totally.
for everything, for you
pop
know.
a pill these days. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not feeling good, so I'm just going to pop a pill, and not
Doctor never
realizing,
says.
like I've maintained for a very long time, if I wake up with a hangover because I've drunk too much, then that's my own fault. Don't go taking tablets for it. Drink water, do what you got to do, and don't do it again. That's just me, but I don't like taking anything. I can't even remember the last time. I think actually the last time I can remember even taking an aspirin was just before my dad died, and I wasn't well, and I needed to be well to get in the hospital, and I actually felt bad enough to even, and that was a soluble aspirin. So that was probably 2 years ago, I think, when Dad passed away. It was about 2 years ago. So yeah, his anniversary was just the other day. So I think it really does come back to that awareness of what you can grow, what you can cook. It doesn't have to look perfect. We're pretty blessed here. We grow a lot of our own fruit and veg where we can. When the rats and the mice and the snakes and the frogs and the chooks and the ducks and the birds aren't attacking it all, and the deer and the kangaroos and the wallabies and everything else that we live with here, it's quite
Amazing.
interesting that we can actually grow anything. But we're getting there, and our eggs are good, and we don't use chemicals on the place, and yes, you get food that looks interesting, and we deal with fruit fly larvae and other things, and we just have to cut them out and put them to sleep. And if we don't, we just have a bit of protein. So yeah, not everybody sees that.
But also, yeah, and it also goes to show though, when I was growing up, being given a pill or being given I don't even know what it's called when you're sick, Dimetap or whatever the
yes, Dimetap, yep.
And yeah, all of those things, that was never really an option at home. We were given turmeric and ginger shots, or we were given vitamin C. And so I guess being raised on that is, for me, there's no alternative.
Yeah.
If I'm sick, I will go eat garlic, eat ginger, have lots of vitamin C. I know when I recently sprained my ankle, I was in so much pain, and my partner just kept saying, just have a Panadol. It'll put you out of your pain. And I was so stubborn. And I said, no, I will not take the Panadol. I was chugging turmeric and all these anti-inflammatory things. And I mean, there's obviously a time and a place, and we are very lucky that we have medicine. It's very important. It saves lives. But I do think the level of medication that people are taking on a daily basis for things that can be healed through adequate hydration, eating well, adequate sleep, getting outside in nature, it's almost like it's too, the answer is so simple that I am shocked that not more people do it.
But
they don't realise. And it's like with things that people are regularly taking, like cholesterol tablets, all those sort of things that people get on and then they have to continue on, and the doctor puts them on because the medical profession is under pressure, because if they don't prescribe people with those conditions, then that can come back on them if the people say have a heart attack, if it's heart pills or blah, blah, whatever. But the thing is, I think, and I heard this recently actually, the amount of good, it doesn't guarantee or keep anybody from having a heart attack or a stroke anyway. There's no guarantee that it will do that. And the percentage of people, I think, is about 4% that it actually assists, whereas there's the 10% of the people that it's got a 10% chance that the medication will actually harm you more than if you weren't having it. So they have to prescribe it so it doesn't come back on them. If someone has a heart attack that's had, you know, high whatever blood pressure or whatever, pressure.
Well, it's a whole cycle.
It's really, and there's no food. There's nobody says, what's your diet like? Unless you're specifically going in and asking about that. No one says, oh, I'm coming for this. And they don't say, well, what are you eating? What's your diet? Blah, blah, blah. And that should be the first thing. And it's,
yeah, and it's often rarely even explored. And it baffles me because if you think about hospitals where people are so unwell, the quality of food in a hospital, I wouldn't even feed my dog. It is horrific. And it doesn't make sense to me because it's like, sometimes I use the analogy, it's like putting really crappy fuel in a really amazing car. And I don't understand how the medical system doesn't see that as a human that works off nutrients and minerals and like all our macronutrients, micronutrients, and that they're needed for all the chemical reactions in our body for things to work properly, why that is not addressed, and why a pill is more often than not given to support something that's not actually supporting it from the root. And my view, I'm not by any means against the medical system, but my view is that the medical system aims to stop people from dying, and the wellness system aims to help people thrive. So if you are on a concoction of medication, but you are not at risk of death, then you're good. But in the wellness space with, naturopaths, nutritionists, and other health practitioners, it's, well, are you happy? Do you wake up in the morning feeling good? Do you have enough energy to get yourself through the day? Are you able to maintain healthy relationships and show up to work in a positive way that's going to impact the people around you? And that to me is health as a whole person. It's not just that they're not going to have a heart attack, but they can't wake up in the morning and they're exhausted, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think my cousin was just in hospital last week, and she took a photo of the food that she was being served. And my response to her was, if they served good food, no one would go home. But it's not food designed to help them, really, not from the photos she showed me.
It's terrible. Back in the day, it was vastly different. It's from what it is today that is served in hospitals, is unbelievable. And the great big children's hospital, which I've spent time in with a child, the ability to buy nourishing, healthy food for that child or for being a visitor there is nigh on impossible, because who is it, the funny basis of, and the other departments in there, there's no healthy, nutritious availability. I was so horrified because it's specifically focused on looking after children, horrified that there's just what was there. I was like, what's happened here? This is supposed to be hospital and the food served and everything. I'm like, what's going on? What happened? Like,
I
what
think
happened?
it's a lot of it is money driven.
It's all
And a lot of it is, you know, franchised
all
cafes
money driven.
now in hospitals because it's money driven. And, you know, fast food outlets, you know, in a way, I mean, you know, I was in at a hospital not that long ago with my parents, and, you know, you can buy dim sims, you can buy potato cakes, you could buy this, and there was some other healthier food there, but it was really designed for people rushing through, grab that and get out, you know, and that's what it was designed for. So again, you know, in everything that you're saying, Sarina, about how we should be looking after people in hospital. I mean, I was talking to a person just this morning, and they were talking about their mum in hospital, and she went in and she was only on three tablets of medication a day, and within a week she was on 43 tablets, and they were one tablet to counter another to counter another.
Yeah, I was going to say half of them are probably to counteract the side effects of the other ones.
Exactly, you know, and so there's a lot of stuff going on in there, and I was shocked when she was talking about the investigation work that was ongoing about that. And, you know, we're not here to, as you say, we're not here to slag off on doctors or the medical system. They save lives, you know, they really do, and they help people. However,
they cause a lot of it as well.
Yeah, getting to the root cause of a problem, you know, back in the day when I used to trust my doctor, and I'd go in there and he'd say, all right, so how much have you drunk? How much have you smoked? You know, now I haven't smoked for a lot of years, but that was the response. You know, there was no, are you eating well? How's your work life? How's your love life? How's your relationship going? You know, have you got a good relationship with your food? And again, because they have cut down, so this was back when we had a family doctor that was at the birth of all three of my kids, you know, bush nursing hospital. And so nowadays you don't have a GP that's going to go and take time out of their day while you go and have a baby. Well, in my case, my wife. But they were cared back then. Now it's you've got 7 minutes or 7.5 minutes
in and out,
and you're in and out. So all they're doing is dealing with the symptoms, not the root cause. In a lot of places.
Yeah, and I think my biggest frustration with that is it's a vicious cycle, because instead of empowering people and teaching them how to look after themselves, you're almost keeping people trapped in a system that is already completely overrun. And I've got nurses that work in hospitals who are absolutely exhausted. Every GP I've ever seen looks like he's about to fall on the floor with exhaustion. They don't look very healthy. And I just think that it could take so much pressure off the medical system if we were teaching people how to do things properly, because then people who actually need the help and support don't get the right support.
And people need to know that properly is simply. It doesn't have to be complicated and too hard, which is why we don't do it.
No, it's interesting. It's yeah. And look, the idea behind a lot of this too is, you know, without going too far down one particular type of hole, is but who's making all the money from the sick people? Because you don't make money from healthy people. And
we all know who.
Have a lot of theories.
Yeah. We all know who.
Yeah, we all know who. And I just don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole in that space. But it's really, you know, when it boils down to it, when you see who's making the money out of all of this, they don't. There's a certain group that don't want people to be healthy, and you know, and they want to shut down the wellness industry, because the wellness industry makes people aware, and you know, and that's the interesting part about it. It's the
woo-woo industry, as we're looked at. Oh, the woo-woo.
Yeah, well, that's why That's why we don't get enough funding to do research. I remember going in to see a GP about polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a reproductive disorder.
My daughter
that I
has
have.
it as well, both
And
of them.
yeah, and she said, well, what are you doing? I said, I want some blood tests. And she was like, well, you should go on the pill or you should take this medication. I said, I don't want to take the medication. I would just like to have these blood tests to check on how the therapy I'm doing is going. And she said, well, what are you doing? And I didn't dare tell her I was a nutritionist because it always ends in an argument. But I said, I'm taking supplements and I'm making lifestyle changes. And she said, if supplements worked, we would use them, but they don't work. And I just shut up. But if putting someone on medication, that's not working either. That's just a band-aid to a problem where then maybe 5 years down the track, if I then want to get pregnant, you'll tell me to take fertility medication. And again, all of it has there's financial investment in all of it. But yeah, I get a lot of practitioners in the industry get immensely frustrated, and there are arguments, and it's a big rabbit hole. And I guess that's why what I want to do is just spread the awareness about menstrual health, about how you can support yourself, how you can support, if you have reproductive issues such as PCOS or endometriosis or going through menopause, that you don't just have to take medication, that there's things you can do with your diet, your nutrition, your lifestyle that are going to have dramatic long-term effects on you that aren't just putting a band-aid on it.
Do you think all that has become more, do you think women these days, maybe in this past 2 decades, it's more prevalent, all the fertility problems and everything than it maybe used to be? Have you looked into that sort of thing?
Yes, it's huge. So it's kind of hard to note because we do have a lot more access to statistics now compared to decades ago of actually doing adequate testing to check women for reproductive disorders. But at the moment, the stats are that 1 in 10 women will experience polycystic ovarian syndrome, which can impact their fertility if it's not treated properly. 1 in 10 women will experience endometriosis, which often leaves women with crippling period pain and heavy bleeding. There was a stat I saw the other day where 90% of women will experience a hormone imbalance at some point in their life, and that often is PMS, which can also be debilitating for women. And so many women are struggling to get pregnant. And I know it's not just a health and nutrition thing. We're also exposed to numerous chemicals that are impacting our endocrine system and our reproductive system, essentially.
And stress, mental stress, work stress.
And stress, absolutely.
Pressure.
Women used to be homemakers, and now they're homemakers and full-time parents and having full-time jobs. So women are under a lot more pressure, but I would go so far to say it's a crisis. Like we're about to hit a fertility crisis, and it's also in men. I don't know the exact stats off the top of my head, but the percentage of healthy sperm in men is dramatically reducing as well, and it's quite frightening.
Yeah.
I think that there are several factors in that, and I'll sort of share my thoughts with that in a second. I want to go back to what Shirley sort of brought up to in that last question. Is it seems to me that a lot of women either don't want to go and see a nutritionist or somebody that can help them. And this might sound a little bit broad, but I know a lot of older women that are going through menopause and perimenopause at the moment, and they're just going to the doctor for hormone treatments and drugs and stuff like that. Whereas, if me as a guy was to suggest, well, have you considered some natural alternative therapies or ways or things to do that might help? It's like, oh, no, I don't want to go down that path. So
absolutely.
I just wonder
that's very true.
Yeah, this is just my observations from the people I know. I'm obviously in that age group now where a lot of women are going through menopause and stuff. And so it's just something I've noted, and I think it's important. And just for the record, the very first story I wrote when I was doing my learning to write, was on endometriosis, because at that time my wife had it, and it was very rare back then. So we're talking, 30 plus years ago.
Or maybe not even as rare as we think, but not spoken about, not addressed, not diagnosed.
Yeah, no one knew what it was.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of research back then into what endometriosis was. Back then I couldn't even say the word properly. So it's really interesting in that aspect of how much has changed. And then back then you didn't have the amount of vaccinations young girls are given these days, from birth right through school. And yes, but we've got to stop this, and yes, we've got to stop that. So I think it's not surprising that a lot of people are having problems getting pregnant, and sperm counts are down. I actually saw a funny report recently where the sperm donors men were being called on to be sperm donors because there was a lack of healthy sperm. And of course, that's all well and good until you come out the other side, because they've changed the laws that if you're a sperm donor, that child may contact you when they're 18 and above. So if you're a healthy sperm donor, you could have 100 people rocking up at your door when they turn 18 saying, "You're my dad. I just wanted to know you." And I think that's actually put the wind up a lot of guys as well, So I do think education really is the key, is to say to people, there are alternatives that aren't, like, they're proven alternatives. They're not rubbish. I mean, women knew what they were doing 100 years ago, 500 years ago. They knew how to prepare the medicines to help people get pregnant, all that sort of stuff. And now, and doctors, or let's say big pharma, they take the plants that were used back then and they scientifically modify them, so they're not even doing the same job. It's just that it's come from, sunflower, or it's come from this flower, or whatever.
Absolutely.
That's right. Look, you've had the support isn't there. Like, if you've heard of the red tent, which in the countries where the women would go at menstrual time and all these sort of times, and there was support and all this sort of stuff. Everything's called an old wives' tale to diminish its credibility. And obviously I am in the age where I've had a lot of friends going through from before menopause, during it, and after. I take nothing, right? Your body does. I haven't had any huge issues with it either. And I know women that are desperate because of the heat and the influence, they go through, some of them go through misery. I often wonder if it's because that they're already on a lot of different medications for things as well, and it gets the body. And of course, once they get a medication that helps or eases or masks a symptom, I won't say it fixes anything, they don't want to not have that, because otherwise they think they're going to have to go back to the misery. So, and they actually do say, "Oh, I'm not going down that path. This just works, so I just take it." And they have got a mental block.
Yeah, well, that's
allowing the body to do its own thing.
Absolutely, and that's what I was going to say is
I even take the pill.
Yeah, there's so many different components. I think in the menopause space is absolutely huge. And I think now a lot more research and evidence for natural therapies is coming out. But for a woman who has kids, has a busy life, has a stressful partner, has all these things going on, and has debilitating perimenopause or menopause symptoms, that can completely turn your life upside down. And I've spoken to women who are feeling so immensely helpless that taking a drug that's going to just stop them from feeling whatever they're feeling is what they need in that moment. Whereas if you think years ago, when women started going through this shift into perimenopause and menopause, and women are now going through it earlier than what they previously did, but they were able to slow down at work. They were able to be at home a little bit more. Whereas nowadays, if you tell a full-time woman who's employed that has a high paying CEO job or whatever, that she's going to get hot flashes, that her sleep's going to be impacted, that she's going to have severe mood changes and all these things happening, she's probably going to be like, just give me the goddamn pill, instead of me trying some natural therapies, which I might still experience some I don't want to say side effects, but natural transition symptoms that happen as you're going through perimenopause. And if women understood what's happening with their hormones and why these symptoms are happening, then that education piece just creates so much more compassion.
Bingo.
Whereas none of that's being shared. So none of these women understand what's going on. So the only alternative they're seeing is to take the medication, and then it's basically in the too hard basket to try other natural therapies.
That was important what you said, because they don't realize that so much of what they're experiencing is part of the process and doing something. So probably, I assume, masking it, drugging it with whatever is interfering in the process, so it can't even get itself done, which makes it worse. And they
Yeah.
don't know, because they think anything that happens, I feel anxious, I feel hot, I feel whatever, or extremes of everything, they think it's something wrong with them, not something right.
You also see this in the childbirth space.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm all over fertility and, supporting women to have a natural birth where they can. It's not always possible. But if you look at the medical system, they try and make birth seem like it should be this painless process. So we have the capacity to, oh my God, why can't I think of the name, where you get basically numb from the waist down?
I had one of those, epidural.
Epidural.
I had that one.
Epidural.
It didn't stop
Yeah,
anything.
epidural, with which, some women can choose to have that, sure, but just like
19.
menopause, your hormones are shifting, so you're going to change. Just like childbirth, you're giving birth to a human. It's meant to hurt, it's meant to change. But I think society has such a rigid structure of how we should show up every day, how things should be done. We don't want to be in pain. We want to experience as much pleasure and joy as possible, that we're just trying to find all these ways to make being a human as easy and painless and least life altering, which has its own issues.
Well, you
I
only have to look at now, they hospitals book in cesareans if you're 5 days late, and
You get the option to have one. There's optionals for
oh,
not necessarily medical reasons, for
exactly.
convenience and all sorts of things, and that's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, all three of my kids were Caesars. There were reasons for the Caesars. They weren't elected. She didn't want to just have a Caesar. And back then, they'd keep you in hospital for a week. Now, with my
10 days.
grandchild,
Next day that
it
you're
was out 2 days later.
It's insane.
So yeah, there's not enough emphasis put on looking after mothers. But then, having said that, I think if we look at society as a whole and the breakdown of society and family and all the rest of it, it's just adding multiple layers of complexity on what is already a complex situation, which is the human body anyway.
But going back to food nourishing for pregnancy, for birth, for afterbirth, for breastfeeding, for all the menopausal state. It's really a psychology of food, because it affects physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. So how do you come across with that with your clients, and what you share in your talks and your lectures that you're doing, and what you've written, your fabulous ebook and everything? How are you?
Well, the way I believe that education is the most important piece to empower people. So in the women's health space that I am in, I want to educate women about, firstly, what their bodies are doing. That's stuff I was never taught, and most people were never taught. Get them to understand what's actually happening in their body, how their hormones impact them, and then trying to slowly teach them how eating differently can support their experience of symptoms associated with like period pain or heavy bleeding or mood shifts or feeling really tired or not having enough energy to go to the gym. And it's hard because, like I said at the beginning, if someone's felt crap for so long, they don't even know the capacity of how good they can feel. So if someone has come from, it depends on the level of their health and awareness. So if someone's come from eating like absolute packaged processed food for a really long time, we start slowly. And once they start, this might just be changing their breakfast to, instead of having just a coffee or a coffee and a piece of banana bread or whatever, getting them to try a smoothie with fresh berries and yogurt, and starting them off small, and then they slowly start to notice a difference in how they feel. And it then gives them this motivation. Because if someone just sits there and tells you, well, you could feel like this and you could feel like that, and they're like, well, eating this food is more convenient and cheaper and faster for me, it's almost like you need to slowly show them that it can be possible. And for all the clients that I work with, yeah, you go.
Does the body have to learn to assimilate to eat differently
Absolutely.
and digest?
If you don't drink much water, your thirst receptor can almost like turn off. So you might notice when you start incorporating more water, drinking, at least 1 liter a day, you might start feeling thirstier because your thirst receptor switches back on.
You can tell the
If
difference.
you
Yeah.
eat if you eat high sugar foods, then eating an apple or eating a banana might not taste as sweet. So it's almost having to retune your taste receptors and your taste buds to slowly being able to eat other foods. And again, that's a process. I would never tell someone who has come from eating takeaway dinners every single night to have a stir fry with like tamari or soy sauce in it or something, because it's going to be too aggressive the other way. So again, you have to slowly readapt their taste buds, readapt their digestive system. It can be quite complicated, because even if people have a very low fiber diet, they're just eating a lot of white bread, white pasta. When you start giving them fibrous foods, so fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, whole grains, it's almost like initially that can send their digestive system into a tizzy, because it's like, well, what's going on? But all of it starts to feed your microbiome, feed your gut, so that you don't have as much bloating, so that gut-brain connection, you feel better mentally, your brain fog starts to lift, you can focus more at work, you can come home and have a conversation with your partner because you didn't eat this bowl of white pasta that's just given you a cloudy head and the inability to speak. So it's almost showing them that they can get different results to what they may have been getting previously, and that they can feel better. And I find that has a snowball effect, where they're like, okay, how can I feel better here or here? And it's like when you start with I always say nutrition is the gateway to so many other things. The gateway to acknowledging your mental health, the gateway to looking at your spiritual health, the gateway to looking at your physical health, because if you're changing your food, you're noticing how your body feels, how your mind feels. So it's pretty powerful.
I think that's a really great piece of information, because in a way the psychology comes in. It's treating multiple aspects of your mind and your body to rethink, because your body knows how to heal itself anyway. So it's got to learn, oh, okay, I used to do that, now I've been doing this, but I want to go back to that because that's better. So there's a lot in it. I think that and again, my journey as a guy has been, I went on to the Michael Mosley 5-2 diet, and then I stopped calling it a diet, because it's not a diet, it's a food awareness program. And I think he, in a way, I mean, Michael Mosley's pretty famous for what he does. I think he's very good with the way he does certain things. But I just feel sometimes he missed the point by calling it the 5-2 diet instead of 5-2 food awareness, because now we've been doing that, twice a week for the last 3 or 4 years, where I make soups and just veggies and, watery, but yummy. And it's about the awareness of the food you're putting in. So what you're consuming. And what that does is, when you do go and have some junk food, you think, do I really need that? Or can I just have a little bit and move on? And that's where I think, as a guy, I've changed a lot from that process. It's just, that's good food, that's not so good for me. Cut back on the not so good, enjoy the good by cooking it myself and enjoying the process. And the textural, it might sound funny, you'd understand this, the textural component of cutting the vegetables, feeling them in your hand, putting them into the pot, doing what you're doing, creating. There's a lot of eating, and I grew up with Italians and Greeks, so there's a lot of eating with your fingers and the food and the love that you put into it.
Yeah, and that's and again, it's a whole connection piece. So in terms of, I work a lot with women who overeat or have a really poor relationship with food or binge eat. And if you're just eating food out of a packet, you have no connection to it. Whereas if you are actively going to the store, figuring out, okay, I'm going to make this beautiful dinner, I'll make a big soup with, slow cooked beef or something. Like you just mentioned, you have to go home, you have to chop the vegetables, you're preparing it, you can smell it, it's getting your digestive enzymes going, it's getting your saliva going, it's enhancing your digestion. You get to wait for it, and then you get to sit down and enjoy it and hopefully bond with your partner or your friend or whoever it is that you're potentially eating with. There's a whole process to it and psychology behind it that goes way beyond people's, what people just, food is so much more than just the food on the plate. It is a whole psychological piece.
Yeah.
And why we eat what we eat and why we do what we do is all to do with psychology. So having that connection to the food and knowing that you've prepared it is going to make you eat it in a completely different way, digest it in a completely different way than just like going and buying it. You don't really care about it and you might just overeat it.
Yep.
Well, I've had a lifelong connection, an intimate relationship with chocolate and its packaging. Like a Cadbury, the way that Cadbury's do their dairy milk packaging, it makes me feel good it does make me feel good when I eat it, and I can't have it at all now because I give myself candida like that. And then I cure it. So I'm right. But I can binge like nobody on earth. I grew up like that. It's been a family, other side of the family, not the Coventry, family tradition to fill your face with Cadbury's chocolate dairy milk, particularly. It's the feel good. And there's something in the packaging, like there is something in the packaging that they utilize, which is a psychological. I feel good. I need that off the shelf. And I just need to stuff it down and feel good for a moment, then feel terrible. When you're in a good space, you go and get the good foods and you feel so much better from preparing and doing that. But it's, I guess, retraining almost our subconscious, getting the subconscious to not click at that block of chocolate. I feel proud of myself because I just walk past it now.
Yeah.
I
think
literally can.
what you're really
Like it was
highlighting,
been a serious thing, not just a.
what you're highlighting though, Shirley, is the marketing that attaches to the foods.
Absolutely, which is
Cadbury. You think about the Cadbury ads, the kid, and he's looking at the girl and she's all upset and he offers a chocolate.
I don't care about the ad.
The chocolate left in the glove box for the dad who's just gone for a job interview to make him feel good. All of that. And you think about the old Kentucky Fried Chicken ads with the family bopping along and, over the hills and having their Kentucky and all the rest of it. I mean, luckily we don't see that ad anymore, but I grew up with that ad. And so it's all emotionally targeted at kids and people and the convenience and, how good's this for you and all the rest of it. That's a big part of making people aware of the food that they're putting in.
There are also people who are paid as a psychologist to create these ads and to create this packaging and the marketing. So again, it comes back to the systems that we're in. Yeah. And food has such a huge emotional component to it. And I remember I was working with a client who had a lot of binge eating issues, and she had memories stemming back to when she was a child, and every time something went wrong or every time she was sad, her mum would say, let's get pizza. So her brain started developing this like subconscious belief that if I'm sad, pizza's going to help me. So now as an adult, anything with melted cheese, she will just binge on. Anytime she feels stressed, overwhelmed, sad, down, depressed, it's like immediately the comfort comes from food. So when I first started studying nutrition, I was like, oh, it's all about the food and what we're eating and what we're choosing. And then the deeper I got into it, I was like, this has nothing to do with the food and it has everything to do with psychology.
Absolutely.
My generation, my girlfriends, like I'm 63, I can see that we were probably a really big generation from the 70s, 1970s on of victims really of that. You all had your period or whatever, so we all stuffed our face with chocolate. You go to look at the movies, when you see movies, and what do they do when they're all miserable and they've had a breakup? They've all got to sit there with the ice cream. You know,
Yeah, it's a lot of
I
subconscious
feel like,
program.
yeah, me and my friends, a lot of us have been really susceptible to that, and that's what we probably have done in these few decades. We've been really bad at that.
Yeah, well, just think about it too. All beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese on a pickle, you know, on a bun.
Absolutely, I can remember it like that. It all came in. Kentucky came in the 70s or whatever. I can remember, and then McDonald's. It all started to come in. It was all a very new thing as well. So it got into our minds.
Yeah, because that's what we were open to. These days, there's a bit going towards it because they're realizing the obesity issues that are out there in the general population. They're banning a lot of things, but I'm probably more aware this year than any other year the amount of advertising done with our sports people, especially our cricketers, because they're sponsored. And I do wonder, you know, these are highly trained sports people. They would not be eating this stuff every day of the week, and here they are promoting this food. And I do wonder where it's all going to stop, really, because they've banned tobacco. Yeah. They're doing now more with sports bet and things like that to warn people of the dangers of addiction to betting and gambling. And so when are they going to stop getting our highly paid, highly trained athletes to stop promoting food that's ultimately making people sick?
And I'm not so sure that in the rooms and behind, because I've actually seen it when I was involved in a semi-professional rugby thing for a while. I was surprised what the coach would say to have after the game and on their breaks, and I'd be sitting there going, what? And I think that in the professional sports, it's actually not as clean a routine of food and snack and everything that they're having as you would think it is. I don't think it's.
Oh, probably isn't.
That's what I think. I'm pretty sure it.
Yeah.
So it's not too surprising, really, about the food thing.
No,
they're always in trouble for drinking and over drinking and everything else. So there isn't a whole lot of discipline in what they ingest, food or otherwise, going on in our professional sports, really, is there?
No, that's it. Now, Sarina, you wanted to add something to that?
All of this is it's a big it's a cultural problem, and it's a systemic problem. If the canteens when kids went to school had healthy options, kids will eat the options. If Milo cereal and chocolate milk is being shown to kids that it's going to help them ace their sporting game or help them grow muscles, then these kids are going to want to aspire to that. So again, it's the systems and the messaging and the marketing and, you know, making health food accessible to people and easy. I know Woolworths, this was years ago, but Woolworths, thank God, had a whole rejig of their stores so that as soon as you walk into the stores, you're walking into the fruit and veg aisle instead of walking into snacks and chocolate. And so people now actively have to walk into separate aisles in order to go to the junk foods and the packaged foods. Whereas if you walk in, I know, but this is in New South Wales anyways, it might be different.
I think it's the same here, actually, if I think of walking into Woolworths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and Coles do a very similar thing.
Yeah.
Aldi don't. Depending on the stores I've seen don't. You sort of walk straight in, and they've changed their meat.
I've seen a couple that do. Big one down here somewhere does.
Yeah, but look, we are running, or we're pretty much run out of time. It's gone amazingly quick, and we could probably keep chatting about a whole lot of things on top of all of that. So, if people want to get a hold of you, your website is, Sarina? Yeah,
so it's sarinacoventry.com. So www.sarina Coventry, COVENTRY.com. And then all of I've got blogs, I've got recipes, I've got my booking system, and my email's on there. If you have any questions, you can reach out to.
Beautiful, beautiful. Shirley, did you have anything to finish off with before we sign off?
Not really, just that I'm looking forward to you contributing some things to Supernal and helping people out with some maybe question and answers and whatever we can come up with. I think it'll be a good addition. And it doesn't, I know your specialty is women's health, but you look at the men's side of it and all that as well, and family and
Absolutely. Absolutely. All of
Yeah.
it. I love all of it. If
Yeah.
you know, one person comes off this and decides to make a better choice around their food, then my job's done.
Yeah, no, and I love it. And I love the fact that you've helped us out with the story. So
yeah,
for readers, this is going into the March-April 2024 issue. It's issue number 47. So we're racing up to issue number 50, which is going to be a big year for us this year. Supernal Magazine Australia.com.au is where you can subscribe, catch all our back issues, see the latest issue. We don't bombard you with emails. You get basically one email a month to say, or per 2 months, to say the magazine's out, really. But check us out on Instagram, check us out on Facebook, and we're looking forward to 2024 being a massive year. It's shaping up that way, and
all about health and
year
healing.
off with some good food.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you, Sarina. Thank you, Shirley. And
Thank you.
enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye.
Bye.